Once a giant, always a giant. For me, it's only a giant.
What's going on YouTube, Diggy546? Definitely hit that subscribe button if you're new. Like the video if you like the video. And I won't tell if you click that bell. But let's go ahead and get into this. Alright, so first off, the shirt came in. The Sterling Shepard Throw Them Things shirt came in with Sterling Shepard fighting Troy Hill. Finally got the t-shirt coming. I mean, Teespring takes forever to ship things, but this time they actually were pretty quick. I got it in about a week and a half. I'll drop the link for the shirt down in the description. Some people have asked, so I'll go ahead and drop that link. But other than that, I wanted to talk about the Giants' 53-man roster. First, I'll go through the 53-man roster, and then I'll talk about who was surprised or who was a surprising cut. I'll save that for the end. But first, I'll go through the roster, and I'll just kind of give my opinion on how we're looking at each position. Mind you, that Casey Crater, our long snapper, was cut, and he said that, well, he didn't say, but reports are saying that he's going to resign. Even Giants.com says that he's going to resign. So that means that somebody on the roster right now that made this 53 is probably going to go to either the PUP list or IR. So let's start off with quarterbacks, get that out of the way. Daniel Jones and Mike Glennon. We already knew that. Move on. Offensive line. And I guess I can kind of start off with this trade. The Giants traded their 4th round pick for Ben Bredeson and a 5th round pick and a 7th round pick from the Baltimore Ravens. The 7th round pick, I think, is for 2023, but the 5th round pick is for next year. So Ben Bredeson, I got to do a little bit of work on him. I got to look at some of his tape. The dude is really good in pass blocking. He's a really good pass blocker. I was impressed with his footwork. He's always on balance. I never really see him ever, if anything, he might get bull rushed sometimes, but he's not going to get bull rushed into the quarterback. And he's never going to be a guy that's just going to let someone just swim right through him and give up sacks that way. So he really looks like a solid pass blocker. And I think he's a starting caliber guard in this league. Maybe he didn't fit with the Ravens as much because he's not necessarily a power run blocker. He's not a guy that's really moving people off the ball at the point of attack, which could be a concern because our offensive line is already good at that. But we can definitely use someone who's that good at pass blocking on this offensive line. So I think that the trade was well worth it. I think that he should start over Shane Lemieux because I think he's a much better pass blocker, and that's what the NFL is looking like. And if Hernandez can play like how he's played this preseason, Nick Gates can continue to be himself, and Bredesen be that left guard, we can literally have 3 guys standing in front of Daniel Jones that'll keep the depth of the pocket. They'll keep it honest, which means that he'll actually be able to step up into the pocket if the tackles collapse. So we just need one side, just one of the tackles, not to be horrible. Other than that, we decided to keep Nick Gates, Will Hernandez, Shane Lemieux, Matt Parrott, of course, Billy Price, the guy we just traded for. Made a video about that yesterday, Nate Solder and Andrew Thomas. So as you look at this roster, you're going to notice that the only tackle, the only swing kind of tackle, backup depth tackle guy is Nate Solder. So I expect there probably will be some move to add another tackle to this roster. I don't know when that'll be, but I definitely see us adding the tackle, whether it be for depth or somebody to compete for that starting spot, because our right tackle spot has really been a problem. And Andrew Thomas struggled as well, and we also needed depth. If both tackles get injured in a game, you'd have to move Nick Gates out to right tackle. It'd be a complete disaster. So that's how the offensive line is looking right now. I do think that we got a lot better adding Billy Price and Bredesen to this line. It makes me feel a lot better than how I felt even a couple of weeks ago when we had Joe Looney and Zach Fulton and all those guys. I think these new guys are better than that. Running backs. I'll get to my surprise cut, but I guess I can kind of work this into there. Saquon made the roster, of course. Devontae Booker, of course. No surprise. Gary Brightwell made that roster over Corey Clement. Now, I didn't expect that at all, but Corey Clement has been known to fumble the ball. I think the stat is every 27 carries, he fumbles the ball. And if you can't hold on to the ball, and you're not really providing much else. He can catch, but if you can't hold on to the ball, and I'm not sure how he was in pass pro, but if you can't do that, you're going to find yourself out of a job when you're dealing with anybody that's under that long Parcells tree. They do not deal with guys who have problems holding on to the football. And Gary Brightwell came in and they basically said, here, this is your job. Go out and take it. They sent him on some pass routes. They handed the ball off to him a couple of times. He did pretty well. So Brightwell kind of earned his job in that last game by catching some passes, you know, living up to his name when they called it. And he's on the roster and Corey Clement isn't. Also, the Giants made a very interesting move. They decided to keep two fullbacks. Colin Gillespie and Eli Penny are on the roster. Eli Penny, of course, is basically a running back. He can run the ball like a running back. He can catch it. He can do pretty much everything. He can block, and he's a special teamer. And now they're saying Colin Gillespie is so good of a special teamer that we decided to keep two fullbacks, which I just never expected us to be able to keep two fullbacks and also be able to keep 7 wide receivers. And I'll get straight into the wide receivers. The bottom of the roster, guys, we all know who made it at the top. Galladay, Shepard, Slayton, Tony, Ross. Those guys made it. Them Dante Pettis made it, and CJ Board made it. So we decided to keep 7 wide receivers, which is something that I had us keeping, except I had us keeping CJ Board and David Sills instead of CJ Board and Dante Pettis. But I can fully understand why Dante Pettis made this roster. He's a better route runner. He's more experienced. He's more familiar with the system. And I think right now he's really a better wide receiver than David Sills is. David Sills is a different type of wide receiver, but I think route in and route out, he's much more versatile than a David Sills. Now, we do lose out on that presence of a big wide receiver besides Kenny Galladay. Tight ends, Evan Ingram, Kyle Rudolph, Caden Smith. There's nothing to really talk about there. I don't think we'll add any more tight ends. A lot of reporters are saying we're really thin at tight end and blah, blah, blah. But if Evan Ingram is ready to go, I don't think we add any more tight ends. The defensive line. I had Raymond Johnson on my defensive line making it. I'm not sure if I had Moa making it, but he didn't make it. But Austin Johnson, Raymond Johnson, Dexter Lawrence, Danny Shelton, Leonard Williams. They did not keep 6 defensive linemen. They kept 5. I thought they would keep 6, but they kept 5. And pretty much I don't have any issue with that because McIntosh was our 6th defensive lineman last year, and he didn't get a jersey in any of the games. So keeping 5 is no problem with me. If something happens, you can always sign a guy off the practice squad, which I'm sure we'll have Moa or one of these other guys on the practice squad to call up. And then you get to your defensive backs. The big surprise that he made the roster because everybody was so sure he was gone, Sam Beal. Now, I think this is partially because they decided to put Aaron Robinson on the PUP list. So he's going to miss the first 6 weeks of the season. But Sam Beal for now is on the roster. James Bradbury, of course. Keon Crossan, we traded that pick for him. So he's making it, mostly a special teamer. Darnay Holmes, that's pretty much a lock. Adoree Jackson. Josh Jackson, I didn't know if he was going to make the roster. A lot of beat reporters were saying that Josh Jackson basically stood no chance at making that roster. But here he is on the roster. I'm not sure if he's going to be the candidate to go to IR because he's been pretty banged up. But somebody on this roster, as I said, is going to go to IR for Casey Crater. Besides Josh Jackson, you look at Julian Love, Xavier McKinney, Jabril Peppers, Logan Ryan. Those are your 4 safeties. They line up exactly right here on the depth chart with alphabetical order. So those are your 4 safeties in order. And then Rodarius Williams is your last corner. So your corners are Rodarius Williams, Josh Jackson, Adoree Jackson, Darnay Holmes, Keon Crossan, James Bradbury, and Sam Beal. Of course, not in any order. And then your safeties, of course, are your Julian Love, McKinney, Logan Ryan, and Jabril Peppers. So we decided to keep 7 corners this time and 4 safeties. Pretty much about what I was thinking of. I did think that that Aaron Robinson will probably be on here, but he's starting off on the PUP list. Moving on, lastly, to your linebackers. Cam Brown is mostly a special teamer. He made it. Lorenzo Carter, of course, Carter Coughlin, making that transition from edge to inside linebacker. I didn't expect Carter Coughlin to get cut, but I wouldn't have been entirely surprised if he would have been cut. But I'm glad that he is on this roster because he's one of my favorite Giants. Tay Crowder is on the roster, of course. Trent Harris had a great offseason and made the roster. He was constantly in the backfield, so I'm happy that they decided to keep him. Blake Martinez, of course, in the middle. Azeez Ojulari, your 2nd-round pick. Reggie Ragland, solid vet, can do it all. Ellerson Smith, hopefully we see him on the field. Hopefully he's not the candidate to go to IR or the PUP list. and then O'Shane Ximines. Those are your linebackers. Notice I've gone through the defensive line, I've gone through the linebackers, and I have not mentioned Fadi Odenigbo. He completely disappeared this offseason. He didn't make much plays at all, couldn't get pressure, already was not a good player against the run. They tried him at stand-up outside linebacker. He's been pretty much a hand in the dirt rusher his entire career, and it didn't work out for him. So Odenigbo is going to go to another team. We just go ahead and write that $1 million off, let him have it, and that I'm fine with that. I'm happy about that because in years past, the Giants would have these players that would disappear in camp, that they would sign in the offseason, and they would just bite the bullet and let that player play for them that entire season, and basically nothing comes out of it, and you wasted a roster spot. So I'm glad that they made that move and got rid of him and put the guy who outperformed him by far, Trent Harris, on the roster. And then lastly, you got Riley Dixon and Graham Gano. So that's your entire 53-man roster. Of course, I guess one of these guys are going to have to get cut because Casey Kreider is your long snapper and he's apparently coming back to the Giants. Again, it could be Ellison Smith, could be Sam Beal, it could be anybody. It could be John Ross. All of these guys that you look at that are injured, Josh Jackson, everybody that you see on this list that's injured could possibly be going to IR to make up that spot for, I was going to say Rodarius Williams, for Casey Kreider. Someone's going to have to make up that spot. And of course, I do expect us to make a trade or to sign an offensive tackle off of the free agency market because we need some more depth there. But as of now, after your initial cuts, the Giants' 53-man roster is looking like that. So now I want to talk about the surprise cuts or the more notable cuts. Corey Clement already touched on about the fumbling. He wasn't going to make it. David Sills, he couldn't provide enough on special teams to counteract what CJ Board is a core 4 special teamer. He's a guy that played every special team snap and played some meaningful wide receiver snaps, and he's a solid wide receiver, and he was going to have a spot on that roster. He couldn't outperform him, and I guess he wasn't as good an all-around receiver as Dante Pettis. So if he can clear waivers, he'll be on our practice squad 100%. If not, I wish him the best. He did a great job while he was here. He worked hard, worked his tail off all offseason, going back to last year. And then, to me, the biggest surprise, or the biggest 2 surprises, were Jonathan Harrison being cut because at times he looked like our best offensive lineman overall this preseason. He was great at getting to the second level. He was great at the point of attack. He was pretty much doing everything right. But I think the addition of Billy Price kind of got him X'd out as that backup center, and they made the decision to move on. And then the second surprise was the fact that we decided to keep 2 fullbacks. I don't get that. I get Cullen Gillespie is good on special teams, but I really feel like someone else could have taken that spot. And I don't see the positive to have 2 fullbacks on the roster. And like I said, I think there's going to be moves made that's going to change this roster. And then lastly, Sam Beal fought back. Sam Beal fought back in this last week and a half and had a nice, solid week of practice and then a nice preseason game against the Patriots and fought his way onto this roster. So maybe he can actually earn the money that he's taken from the Giants the last couple of years because he has not played many games. But that's your 53-man roster. Those are the surprises that I kind of took away from there. I wasn't really too shocked. There was nothing like a Cam Newton getting cut from the Patriots that happened here. But, I guess the closest thing like that will be Corey Clement and Jonathan Harrison. But no huge surprises. I think the Giants 53 is a lot better than last year's 53. That's all you can hope for. And I'll be here to update any more moves that they make over the next couple of weeks or the next week and a half before the first game. If you made it this deep into the video, come on, just hit the subscribe button. I make Giants content primarily, draft content secondarily, and during the season, I'm going to be doing a lot of reacting to pretty much most of the NFL games and everything NFL. So if you made it this deep, go ahead and join the D6 squad.